A destroyer literally ripped in half, yet somehow kept fighting. But what they found 75 years later at the bottom of the ocean changed everything. Fletcher Class Destroyer specifications. The USS Abner Reed was a Fletcher Class Destroyer, hull number DD-526, built at Bethlehem Steel Company in San Francisco, California, launched on August 18, 1942. And you need to remember that date because it becomes extremely important later. The ship was named after Abner Reed, a Civil War naval officer who was killed in action during the Battle of Mobile Bay in 1864. Fast forward to World War II, and his namesake ship was commissioned into service on February 25, 1943, with Commander Thomas Burroughs in command. Brand new ship, brand new crew, about to head straight into combat in the Pacific. This ship would need every weapon it had, because where it was heading, most ships didn't come back. Now, the Abner Reed wasn't some experimental vessel or outdated relic. This thing was cutting-edge 1940s naval technology. We're talking 376 feet long. That's longer than a football field, a 39-foot beam, which is the width of the ship, and it displaced 2,050 tons. The armament on this destroyer was serious. 5 5-inch dual-purpose guns that could hit surface targets or aircraft, 10 21-inch torpedo tubes arranged in 2 quintuple mounts, and then you had various anti-aircraft weapons, including 40mm and 20mm guns. The Fletcher class design was considered the finest destroyer class of the entire war. The U.S. Navy built 175 of these ships between 1942 and 1944. They were the perfect balance of speed, firepower, and range. The Abner Reed could hit speeds over 35 knots, which is roughly 40 miles per hour on water. The crew complement was approximately 273 officers and enlisted men. So this wasn't just some throwaway patrol boat. This was a serious combat vessel designed for the brutal ship-to-ship fighting happening across the Pacific theater. She was armed to the teeth, fast as hell, and built to be damn near unstoppable. But here's the thing. Being powerful doesn't mean being invincible, and her first real test would happen somewhere most Americans didn't even know was under attack. Early Pacific service and Aleutian campaign assignment, after shakedown training and sea trials off the California coast, which was standard procedure for every new ship. The USS Abner Reed got her orders in May 1943. She was assigned to Task Force 16 and told to head north, not to the tropical islands everyone thinks of when they hear Pacific War. North, to the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. And here's what most people don't know. The Aleutian Islands were the only American soil occupied by enemy forces during World War II. Japan had invaded and occupied the islands of Attu and Kiska in June 1942, actual U.S. territory under enemy control. The only time that happened in the entire war, and nobody talks about it. The Aleutian campaign happened in one of the most remote, inhospitable places on Earth. We're talking freezing temperatures, near constant fog, unpredictable currents, and conditions that made navigation a nightmare. The Abner Reed participated in the shore bombardment of Kiska Island on July 22, 1943, then again on August 2nd as part of Operation Cottage. The mission was simple: soften up the Japanese defenses before the Allied invasion, prevent them from reinforcing or evacuating their garrison. So the ship served blockade duty in these fog-shrouded freezing waters, basically cutting off the enemy's escape routes. But here's what made it so dangerous. The Japanese had mined the waters around these islands heavily, hundreds of naval mines floating just below the surface, tethered to the seafloor by cables, waiting for a ship to brush against them. The crew of the Abner Reed spent weeks patrolling in some of the worst conditions imaginable. No tropical Pacific islands here, just cold, gray water, zero visibility from the fog, and the constant threat of enemy submarines, surface ships, or hidden mines lurking just beneath the waves. The crew couldn't see what was coming, but what was waiting in those freezing, fog-covered waters would literally tear this ship apart. The Mine Strike Disaster, August 18, 1943, exactly 1 year to the day after the ship's launch. The irony of that date is almost cruel. It's 0150 hours, which is just before 2 a.m., middle of the night, pitch darkness. The USS Abner Reed is conducting anti-submarine patrol operations near Kiska Island when heavy fog rolls in, reducing visibility to basically zero. The ship is running its standard patrol pattern, the crew at their stations, when it happens. The explosion hits the starboard side, which is the right side of the ship, near the stern. It's a Japanese moored contact mine. These things were floating just below the surface, connected to the seafloor by a cable, and the moment the ship's hull brushed against it, it detonated. But here's where it gets catastrophic. The blast didn't just blow a hole in the ship, it detonated the aft magazine, which is where all the ammunition for the rear guns was stored. That triggered a secondary explosion in the fuel tanks. The combined force of these explosions instantly severed approximately 75 feet of the ship's stern section. Everything aft of the number 4 5-inch gun mount, which was the second gun from the back, was just gone. Ripped clean off, torn metal, severed electrical systems, ruptured bulkheads, the entire back fifth of the ship. The 75-foot stern section sank in minutes. It plunged into 240 feet of freezing Alaskan water and disappeared into absolute darkness. And here's the part that makes this a tragedy. 71 sailors were in that stern section when it went down. Gun crews, engine room personnel, damage control parties. Some of them died instantly in the blast. The lucky ones, if you can even call them that. Others were trapped in compartments as the stern sank, stuck in flooding rooms, in water cold enough to kill you in minutes, even if you didn't drown. 71 men, gone in an instant. But here's the insane part. The front section didn't sink. Miraculous survival and reconstruction. The forward 300 feet of the USS Abner Reed stayed afloat against every conceivable odds. The ship refused to go down. The watertight bulkheads held. These are the internal walls designed specifically to contain flooding, and they did exactly what they were supposed to do. The crew immediately started emergency damage control procedures. They sealed off compartments, shored up weakened structures with whatever they could find. They jury-rigged the steering because the stern rudder was obviously gone with the rest of the back of the ship. The Abner Reed was basically a floating stump at this point, but it was floating. Two sister ships, the USS Bancroft and the USS Calk, both Fletcher Class Destroyers that were part of the same task force, responded immediately. And you have to understand how dangerous this was. Heavy fog, mines still in the area. They had no idea if there were more mines nearby or if Japanese submarines were lurking, but they came alongside anyway. They transferred medical personnel aboard the crippled Abner Reed, evacuated the seriously wounded sailors. Then they took the destroyer under tow to Adak, which was the nearest Allied base, still in the Aleutians. From Adak, ocean-going tugs towed what was left of the ship over 1,500 miles to Puget Sound Naval Shipyard in Bremerton, Washington. And here's where it gets wild. They didn't just patch it. The engineers at Puget Sound designed and constructed an entirely new stern section from scratch. We're not talking about a quick repair job. They built a complete stern, new gun mounts, new living quarters, new propeller shafts, new rudder, new fuel tanks, everything. The construction took roughly 3 months. On November 25, 1943, the USS Abner Reed returned to active duty. Same ship, new tail. She went on to participate in multiple Pacific campaigns, the Gilbert Islands, the Marshall Islands, the Marianas. She earned 4 battle stars for her service. The ship that should have died, that had 75 feet of itself sitting on the ocean floor in Alaska, became a legend in the Pacific Fleet. But this ship's story gets even darker. Second loss in Philippine waters. After her miraculous reconstruction and successful participation in campaign after campaign across the Pacific, the USS Abner Reed got new orders in the fall of 1944. The Philippines, specifically operations around Leyte Gulf in support of the Allied invasion. This is late October, early November 1944, right after the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which was the largest naval battle in human history. And by this point in the war, Japan had started using a new tactic, kamikaze attacks. These weren't desperate accidents or random suicide crashes. These were organized suicide missions with volunteer pilots. The first organized kamikaze attacks had begun on October 25, 1944, just days earlier. Destroyers on radar picket duty, which means they were out front providing early warning against air attacks, were prime targets. November 1, 1944. The Abner Reed is operating in Leyte Gulf when a Japanese kamikaze aircraft appears, most likely a Zero fighter or similar single-engine aircraft, loaded with explosives and fuel. The ship's anti-aircraft guns engage. They're firing everything they've got at this incoming plane, but it gets through. The aircraft crashes into the starboard side, the same side that got hit by the mine a year earlier. The impact triggers a massive explosion, combination of the aircraft's fuel, its bombs, and the ship's own magazine. The explosion breaks the destroyer's back. Catastrophic structural failure. The ship starts sinking immediately, literally breaking apart as it goes down. From impact to the ship slipping beneath the water took less than 2 hours. 22 sailors were killed in the attack and sinking, but this time, nearby vessels were able to rescue the survivors. The USS Abner Reed, the ship that survived the impossible, that came back from the dead and kept fighting across the Pacific for over a year, slipped beneath the Philippine waters and disappeared. The ship that refused to die finally died for good. So now you've got two pieces of this ship sitting on two different ocean floors, thousands of miles apart. The original stern section in Alaskan waters, the main hull in the Philippines. But here's the thing, only one of them would ever be found. The 75-year search for the lost stern. After the mine strike in 1943, the U.S. Navy officially declared the stern section site a war grave. War grave designation means it's a site containing the remains of military personnel, and it's protected from disturbance under federal and international law. But there was a massive problem. The Navy didn't have exact coordinates for where the stern went down. Think about the navigation technology available in 1943. Celestial navigation, which means using the stars and sun position to figure out where you are. Dead reckoning, which is calculating your position based on speed and direction from your last known location. Basic radio direction finding. That's it. Now add in the conditions. Heavy fog, night, combat operations, the chaos of a catastrophic explosion. Precision location fixing was basically impossible. The crew knew approximately where they were, near Kiska Island, but that covers a huge search area. The official reports listed a general area, not precise coordinates. For 75 years, those 71 sailors had no marked grave, no memorial site, no place for families to visit or remember. Multiple informal search attempts happened over the decades. Veterans groups in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, maritime historians, World War II, researchers using archival records. Every single attempt failed to locate the wreckage. The Aleutian Islands are among the most hostile maritime environments on the planet. Violent storms, near constant fog, unpredictable conditions, strong currents, cold water, poor visibility even underwater. Plus, the location is incredibly remote, hundreds of miles from major ports. Limited access for search vessels. Based on those imprecise 1943 records, the potential search zone covered dozens of square miles of ocean floor. Imagine being a family member. You know exactly how your loved one died. You know when it happened, August 18, 1943. But you don't know where, just somewhere in Alaskan waters. No confirmed location, no underwater memorial, no closure. For 3/4 of a century. Then in 2018, someone finally decided to use technology that didn't exist when the ship went down. Discovery by modern technology. July 17, 2018. A joint mission between the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and the U.S. Coast Guard. The vessel was the Coast Guard cutter Maple, a 225-foot seagoing buoy tender equipped for oceanographic work. Now, here's an interesting detail. The team wasn't specifically searching for the Abner Reed initially. They were conducting general seafloor mapping and wreck documentation in Aleutian waters. The team included maritime archaeologists, historians, and Coast Guard personnel. The technology they were using is what made all the difference. Multi-beam sonar, which creates detailed three-dimensional maps of the seafloor, and a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV, equipped with high-definition cameras. This equipment can search and document wrecks in conditions that are completely impossible for human divers. The sonar detected an anomaly consistent with ship wreckage off Kiska Island. The depth reading came back at 290 feet. That's deeper than the 240 feet recorded in the original 1943 reports, which means either the measurements back then were imprecise or the wreckage slid down a slope on the seafloor over the decades. They deployed the ROV to investigate, and what they saw was incredible. The stern section was sitting largely intact on the seafloor, not capsized, not inverted, sitting upright, as if it had just settled normally to the bottom and stayed there. The hull number 526 was clearly visible on the hull plating. After 75 years of sitting in salt water, you could still read it. The propeller guards, which are the protective cages around the propellers, were intact and recognizable. The depth charge racks, where anti-submarine depth charges were stored, were still in place. Gun mounts were visible, though the actual guns themselves might have been blown off or corroded away. The overall condition was remarkably preserved. Cold water does this. The Alaskan water is near freezing year-round, which slows decomposition and corrosion dramatically. Low oxygen levels at that depth also slow bacterial activity. less wave action and disturbance. The wreck had essentially been frozen in time for 75 years. You could still see the equipment, still identify the structures. It looked shockingly intact, like it had just gone down recently instead of 3/4 of a century ago. But getting closer with the ROV showed details nobody was ready for: archaeological documentation and war grave status. The Discovery team conducted extensive photographic and sonar documentation over multiple ROV dives. High-definition cameras captured detailed video and still images from every angle. Sonar mapping created a precise three-dimensional model of the entire wreck site. The goals were clear: create a permanent historical record, assess the wreck's condition, confirm the identity beyond any doubt, and document the war grave for legal protection. The survey didn't just cover the main stern section, they documented the surrounding debris field too, and that debris field revealed some haunting details. Personal effects scattered around the wreck site, ammunition, shells and cartridges still visible on the seafloor, equipment like tools and mechanical parts, structural debris from the explosion. There were possibly personal items too, though it's difficult to identify specific objects at that depth and resolution. But they're almost certainly there, the belongings of men who died instantly 75 years ago. Here's the important legal point. As a designated war grave containing the remains of 71 U.S. sailors, the site received protected status under the Sunken Military Craft Act. That's federal law. Protection means no artifact recovery, no disturbance of the wreckage, no unauthorized diving or exploration. Violating war grave protections carries serious federal penalties, including fines up to $100,000 and potential criminal charges. The Discovery team followed strict protocols. Observe and document only. Touch nothing. Remove nothing. This is a tomb. The remains of 71 sailors are still inside that wreck, in the compartments, in the gun mounts, in the spaces where they were working when the mine detonated, entombed exactly where they died 75 years ago. After the documentation was complete, the U.S. Navy worked with family members of the lost sailors. They informed them of the discovery, provided photographs of the site, and finally, after 7 decades of uncertainty, gave them specific coordinates, a location where their loved ones rest, closure that took 75 years to arrive. And what this discovery means goes way beyond just one ship: memorial significance and historical impact. The discovery of the USS Abner Reed stern section represents the most significant World War II naval archaeology find in Alaskan waters. To give you context, dozens of World War II-era ships and aircraft were lost during the Aleutian campaign. Most of them have never been located. The Abner Reed stern section now serves as a permanent underwater memorial to those 71 sailors. And these casualties represent the U.S. Navy's worst single-day loss during the entire Aleutian campaign. For perspective, the entire Aleutian campaign from June 1942 to August 1943 saw roughly 550 U.S. military deaths across all branches, with over 1,600 total casualties when you include the wounded. The Abner Reed mine strike accounted for about 13% of all Navy deaths in that campaign, in a single incident. August 2023 marked the 80th anniversary of the sinking. That anniversary brought renewed attention to the story. Memorial services were held. Media coverage brought the Abner Reed back into public consciousness. Families who lost relatives in 1943 gathered to remember. Some of them were children when their fathers or uncles died. Now they're in their 80s and 90s. Finally able to visit a specific location, see photographs of the wreck site, and know exactly where their loved ones are. The discovery also provided crucial historical data about naval mine warfare impacts. Technical analysis of the wreck showed exactly how the mine explosion propagated through the ship's structure, how the stern separated, how the damage occurred. This helped naval architects and historians understand the vulnerabilities of World War II-era destroyer design in ways that theoretical analysis never could. It informed understanding of Japanese mine warfare tactics in the Aleutian theater, the types of mines used, their placement strategies, their devastating effectiveness. The discovery contributed to a broader historical understanding of the challenges of Arctic and subarctic naval operations during World War II. The conditions Allied sailors faced in the Aleutians were as harsh as any theater in the war: extreme cold, constant fog, isolation on undersupplied bases, limited support thousands of miles from the main Pacific Fleet. These men fought in brutal conditions, in a campaign that most Americans never even knew was happening. America's forgotten war on American soil. Those 71 men finally have a marked grave. Their families finally have coordinates, photographs, a place to remember and honor their sacrifice, and their story, their service on a ship that refused to die until it died twice. In a campaign history tried to forget, won't be forgotten again. If you want more stories like this, that video on screen covers another warship discovery that rewrote history. Click it.